Live from Modi'in, Israel. It is the one, the only, and we are very thankful for that. Hello, Young.
Hi, Mike. How are
Good
you?
morning. I'm doing fine. I've had my morning entertainment, which is 3 minutes of you prior to the turning on the recording. And,
It was just a little sharing, Mike. That's all it was. But I've got my energy drink here. So like, yeah, just in case, I come out of the stratosphere for a while.
Yeah.
Hey, by the way, stratosphere. Can you believe William Shatner was in space?
That was an interesting one to see, this guy that is at that age to be able to
90
go into
years
space.
old.
Yeah, I know.
90 years old.
I thought it was kind of fascinating, actually, that that he could do that. I mean, it's not something I've really wanted to do. I think flight level 36380, something like that. Those are fine for me. I'm not really wanting to go that far up, but I think it was great that he was able to do that after all that, the Star Trek stuff. So kind of the perfect person for that job, right?
It's really funny, but if you really want to appreciate William Shatner, you've got to watch clips of the show Boston Legal, where he played Denny Crane. Really? Okay, let's get back to Israel.
Or you could watch Police Academy and reruns of Priceline commercials and find out this guy was really not a good actor.
No.
Yeah.
No. Kind of amazing.
It is. Okay.
Let's talk about Israel.
Yes.
Lots going on here. First of all, we're in the throes of our chillier fall weather.
Okay.
We actually had a few sprinkles the last 2 mornings.
Okay.
Temperatures have plummeted between 74 and 76 here in Modi'in. And it's funny because you see all the kids walking around with fleece jackets now. I mean, seriously, just because it's not 104. I mean, come on, and wow. And what's funny is a couple of years from now, when they're all in the Army, when you're in a combat unit in the IDF, it is a standard thing that you don't wear a jacket. So you see these guys with rolled up sleeves when the rest of us are shivering in Jerusalem.
Yeah.
But speaking about Jerusalem, I have to tell you an amazing experience I had the other day. It wasn't the Breslov guys dancing on the top of the van. That's kind of passé here. For Franklin, though, that would get a lot of attention, I'm sure.
Possibly, yeah, depending on where you were at. There would be some places that they would just go, oh, wow, some more crazies. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll talk more about this part another time. I went through Ir David, the city of David, and the Minharot, the Kotel tunnels. I hadn't been either place in over 2 years.
Wow.
To be in the Kotel tunnels and have no tours, no people was really freaky.
So were you just able to go by, were you by yourself walking through there or what?
Yeah, because I've got my little, my tour. Yeah. My tour guide's license. And in the Minharot, they know me.
Yeah, of course.
So like they couldn't, so actually they said, yeah, because, I've got my hat on backwards and they said, Hanoch, even with a mask, we know you. It's like, seriously. What they're really saying was, who else in their right mind would walk around like that?
That's true.
Seriously, I have our border police look at me and say, yo, like, I don't know what they're saying. Anyway, I got off the light rail at the central bus station, and there's a large sonic boom right when I got out. And I looked up, and there was one jet on to my right, and 4. Now, these are very low. We never have fighter jets flying over Jerusalem.
Yeah.
And there were 4 in formation.
Wow.
So I look up And I muttered, of course, I always think I'm talking to myself. And people hear me. I don't know how they do that. But I said, Hem lo mishalanu. They're not ours. I recognize now Israel has 3 fighter jets, versions of them. We have the F-15, we have the F-16, and we have the F-35. These were not them. I recognize that. It's not that big a deal. I mean, it's a totally different silhouette. So this woman turns around and she says to her friend about me, can you believe, like, and I love when people say this, Eza Amerikaim Kaele, like, what an American like this. So, like, what other fighters would be flying over Jerusalem? We're not at war. So I really wanted to punch her in the back of the head. Seriously. What was it? They were 4 Luftwaffe fighter jets.
Wow.
German, there's an international exercise going on here in Israel, several countries, and as a sign of solidarity with us, because remember, Israeli fighter jets flew over concentration camps, flew over Dachau, in Germany. So the Germans, in solidarity with us, wanted to fly over Jerusalem, wanted to fly over the Knesset in a salute.
Wow.
So congratulations to me for 2 things. One, recognizing that we had foreign fighters over our capital. And the second, for not beating that woman within an inch of her life, for insulting me. And I was right.
It as it is, once again, I mean, Hanok, you bring forth the truth of things. In order to be in Israel, in order to be just commonplace, you have to believe in miracles. And that's, you prove that once again.
Now I'm wearing my brand new Darth Vader shirt, and on the back, do you know what it says? Don't underestimate the power of the dark side. And it's true. He's one of my rabbanim, he's one of my teachers. Okay, let's move on.
Please.
For those of you who I've gotten several emails after our last broadcast. One said, you were so excited about studying the Coptic Church and the Syrian Orthodox, referred to as Syriac Church. Why? And then he put in parentheses, rolling his eyes. So I'll give you a quick, like 60-second thing on it. First of all, the Syrian Orthodox Church used to be referred to as the Syriac Church or the Assyrian Church.
Okay.
Is one of the oldest churches. I was in the Church of Saint Mark. Now, all of these guys, all of the Eastern churches claim to have some relic of somebody. Somebody's buried in the sub-basement. I don't even want to go there. But what's fascinating is there's an inscription in the wall. All these churches have been renovated many times over. It's not an ancient inscription. It's probably from around the time of the Crusaders. So it could be 1,000 years old, or at least 700-800. It's in Aramaic, the language they continue to pray in. That is the language that Yeshua spoke. He also spoke Hebrew. By the way, someone tried to convince me that Yeshua spoke Greek, and I proved to them very conclusively that he wouldn't have, but we have to save something for next week.
Yeah,
we may not have any birthdays. I don't know. So it's fascinating. It's fascinating that I could look at this inscription and read it. A modern Israeli. Okay. The Coptic Church. Now, this person who wrote to me basically said, look at the size of the Hebrew roots community. What's the big deal about the Copts? Well, I'll put it to you very simply. In Israel, there are less than 2,000 Coptic Christians, not a big community. In the world, there are 25 million, 20 million alone in Egypt. How many
Huh.
Hebrew roots people are there? A couple of thousand, maybe? Anyway, so it's just, to keep things in perspective. And again, it highlights, as you pointed out last week, very, very clearly, Christianity here is very different than what Americans are used to
Mhm.
in most. Now, of course, the 1 billion Catholics in the world would feel a little more at home. But even Catholic churches here are far more Eastern Orthodox in their appearance than Catholic churches in America.
Oh, totally, totally. I mean, and this was one of the things that I think that what you're doing of looking at these, these churches, and I'm glad it's you and not me, because I really kind of get the heebie-jeebies when I go into places like that. Just it's the feeling I don't like. I've been in, Catholic churches in Europe and also, of course, in Israel, and I just don't like the feeling I get in there. But the thing is to understand the history of religion coming forth
Absolutely.
in Israel is to be able to understand the Jewish people, to be able to understand Ephraim, Judah, the split that's between all of those things. It really helps. It helped me in understanding how to further work to repair this breach.
It's incredibly enlightening. And I'll just throw a little nugget from last night's class, which again is totally unconnected. Okay. There was a professor who spoke. I've never heard of this guy. His name is Wave, Wave, Nunnally. He's a professor in
Okay.
an evangelical college in the US.
Hmm.
Has been here many times, is a big believer in studying the Bible where it occurred.
Okay.
And he is absolutely, totally focused in his life on studying it in the context, studying Yeshua. Of course, he said Jesus, Yeshua in the context. Now, this guy has studied the Mishnah and later sources, including the Talmud Bavli, the Babylonian Talmud. And he just threw out a little nugget that I'm going to follow up with him on. All of the different halachic issues that Yeshua raises in the gospel, the 4 accounts of the gospel, each and every one was later resolved. I mean, these were ongoing debates in the Jewish community.
Mhm.
They were all resolved, he says, in favor of Yeshua's opinion, not based upon that it was Yeshua's opinion, but in other words, that became so. Okay, so bottom line,
That would
without
be a
getting too much
fascinating
on it,
that would be a fascinating follow-up to
oh,
give us. Yeah, that would be great.
that my contention has always been that Yeshua fit within mainstream Judaism of the Second Temple period, which was different than the Judaism of today and different than the Judaism of the First Temple period.
Yeah.
There are some areas where Yeshua has the same opinion as Hillel, the
Yeah.
Pharisee. Some where he comes out with the Sadducees. Some where he comes out with the Qumran group.
Yeah.
Shows that he was an original thinker, but all the thoughts and the opinions were within the mainstream of Jewish life. But that's probably a whole different thing. I got 3 different emails asking me for the specific guidelines, as because I mentioned about Israel opening up. The moment they're released, I'll be happy to share them. But right now, it's a big, it's kind of a secret. They're all like, rumble, rumble, rumble.
Yeah.
Now, I have asked nothing of the Biden administration.
Good thing.
I like, where am I going with this one?
Yeah.
But there's one thing I want to ask Biden. I want Biden to issue an executive order stating that Israelis cannot come to the US until Israel opens up for Americans to come to Israel.
Hmm. Well, maybe we can
30
get that, maybe we can get that email to him between his naps. We'll see.
Well, if you hear cackling in the background, that's the vice president sharing her opinion. Anyway,
That's true.
30,000 Israelis on an average day travel from Israel.
Oh, yeah.
It is okay. So someone else said, how is it that Israel can hold back tourism when it's such an important part of the economy? So now I have to share some statistics. As of 2019, because 2020 doesn't count, like nobody worked. 2019, tourism was 5.9%, I usually round it to 6, of our gross domestic product. Now, for tour guides like me, we're starving. The hotels are making money hand over fist now because Israelis don't want to travel abroad with their kids who are not vaccinated and then have to be home after their vacation for 10 days with these kids again. So, as they're in isolation. So they're all going to Israeli hotels. The hotels are doing great. Bus drivers are, they're driving other things, driving other bus routes. They're driving kids to school. They're driving internal Israeli tourism, class trips. It's the tour guides that are sitting there saying, needing to spare a dime. Anyway, so we don't have updated guidelines. Today I got the rarest of birds in my email. It was a guiding inquiry for people who were asking me if I might be available for a couple of days in June of 2022. So I'm scouring my planning books. Well, I'm not so sure, but let me check. I'll get back to you. Okay, turning to a somber note, kind of looking at Israel. Last week was the yahrzeit, the anniversary of the murder of Yitzhak Rabin.
Yeah.
Now, what's the word in English? Acrimonious debate continues. It is amazing the things that Jews will say and threaten other Jews with. We should take some of that angst and anger and throw it towards Hezbollah, which we're going to get to in a moment. Hezbollah, of course, are the guys that are running Lebanon. Hezbollah just announced the other day that they have 100,000 trained fighters. That wasn't a threat to us. That was a threat to the Christians. Because remember that tremendous they had in Beirut in the port? Well, the judge doing the inquiry on that, it seems that they're going to blame the people who were guilty for it, Hezbollah. So they started gunfire in the streets between Christian militias. Of course, the Lebanese army and police were nowhere to be found. Perhaps they went to Rosh Pinah, to visit northern Israel. I have no idea. Our general in command of our, what's called the Home Front Command, Pikud HaOref in Hebrew, their job is to prepare Israeli citizens whenever there's a potential conflict. Like they'll be the ones that'll, send out a nice note saying, hey, good time to clean out your shelters. Why don't you stock up on water? Those kind of things. Well, I mean, this is not a surprise. He said, when war breaks out with Hezbollah, and that's fascinating the way we speak here in Israel. It's never if
Yeah.
there's another war. It's
Yeah.
always when there's another
When.
war.
Sure.
We can expect just from Hezbollah. This is nothing from Syria. This is nothing from Gaza. Between 2,000 and 2,500 missiles per day. Frame of reference, Gaza was 4,400 missiles in 11 days.
Yeah.
Hezbollah, using the advantage of having territorial integrity from Lebanon, has been able to get in really advanced Iranian stuff with GPS guidance. It is not going to be pretty.
No, because the Iron Dome will be totally overwhelmed at that point.
Overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Absolutely overwhelmed. It already was with Gaza. 90%, I read this, it's amazing, it's interesting. The more I study the gospel accounts, the more I study, Matthew, records this, Luke records that, Mark has a different version on it, John is looking at something else totally differently. All of a sudden, I'm able to remember statistics. Maybe I needed to be studying the gospel accounts all along. I know that's what people are thinking. Praise God, this wonderful, go Chanoch. 90%. You have to
I have no
understand.
control, folks. All I have is the record button. That's all I've got. Okay.
Don't you remember? You have no control of the horizontal or the vertical. This is what's happening.
Yeah, I'm trying to tune this, and the knobs have fallen off. So.
No. Yeah, my knobs have fallen off a long time ago. Out of the 4,400 missiles, 90% of those targeting populated areas were knocked down. And then those that were identified as tracking towards unpopulated areas weren't. But wait a second, let's go back. 90% were stopped. 10% got through.
Yeah.
With a much smaller percentage. Okay, meanwhile, our government is still working on negotiating to pass a budget. If they don't pass a budget by November the 14th, the government falls.
Oh.
All these little tidbits from Israel. An emergency appropriation of $1.5 billion, which is a heck of a lot of shekels, has just been approved to prepare our Air Force for a potential strike on Iran. I personally don't think Israel will do that, but I remember growing up in New York City when we were certain that the Soviets were going to, bomb at any time. Yeah. So, it's not a thing. Okay. This Sunday is the 31st yahrzeit of the murder of my teacher, Rav Meir Kahana, Hashem Yikam Damo, killed in New York City after a meeting by El Said HaNoser, a member of what no one knew at the time, something called Al-Qaeda. And initially, Noser got off, like with a slap on the wrist, but then the federal government did a rights violation, whatever, and he's away for life. But they confiscated. He lived in Jersey City, New Jersey. They confiscated all these documents, and the FBI never bothered to translate them.
Wow.
Because they were all kind of pleased that Rav Kahana was murdered. It's like, one less wacko Jew to worry about. Well, guess what happens? 3 years later, the World Trade Center is bombed for the first time.
Yeah.
And it turns out, big surprise, all these guys were working together. Surprise, surprise, surprise.
There you go.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So 31 years, Rav Kahana. Unbelievable. Okay, the news is already too somber, and I have another piece of somber news in a moment, but let's talk about something happy. You and I have spoken many times about how we both believe the youth, the next generation, is the one of promise. And we say that without reiterating, well, at least without me reiterating how sorely disappointed I am with the current generation. But okay, well, guess what? I got a message yesterday. One of our youngest listeners, and this would be Mr. Judd Stiles.
Ah,
Now, Judd, remember, is James Stiles' favorite brother. In the
yes.
whole world, he's his favorite brother.
Yes, he is.
Judd was complaining to his mom that trying to say the Hebrew letters hurts his throat. So when we have a young person so willing to sacrifice, now my advice to him, Judd, if you're listening, you should ask your Aunt Marky to practice the letters with you, and it'll hurt a lot less. Just a suggestion. Okay. In the Parshiot, now we're talking about Avraham. Now, you and I usually initiate this kind of conversation, are standing like basically so much of the world is over there and we're over here saying, what are y'all not getting?
Yeah.
Avraham, remember, was the only one. It wasn't that he was the minority. He was the only one.
Yeah.
Uno, single, echad. But he was committed. Now I have to share some more. I got some really disappointing. Well, actually, I got a lot of disappointing news yesterday. One was that my gums are in such a state that basically they asked me if I had a mortgage. I said, no, I don't own anything. So, well, you may want to take out a mortgage to pay for this.
Great.
So this is not good. But then I heard sad news. A really nice guy, his name was Elad. Elad was the owner of my gym. Was killed in a car accident yesterday.
Oh.
A truck plowed into him from behind, didn't hit his brakes, didn't, whatever it was. 30 years old, the father of 2 small children. Why do I mention this in this context? We often put things off.
Yeah.
You know, I remember growing up, being a teenager, thinking, never do today what you can put off for tomorrow. And I back in 2012, 2013, this is before we met, Mike, when people began urging me to come back to America to speak to groups, I had every excuse in the book. I'm too old. There are more intelligent people. It should be some rabbi guy. I don't have the money for tickets to fly. I don't like to fly. I don't sleep well in different beds. I got.
You don't
know what?
travel. You don't travel well. I can attest to
No,
that. Hanok
no,
does
I
not
don't.
travel well.
No, I don't.
He's
This is why
complicated.
this is this is why I'm spending several weeks in Franklin. So I'm just warning y'all. I'm sure it'll be okay with Kathy.
Yeah,
And if
I'll
it's
check
okay
with.
with Kathy,
Yeah, well,
it's good enough for me.
I
Anyway,
need to check with Kaya actually.
yes, yes. And then for that, you'll probably have to ask Rosie if it's okay with this is really problematic. Okay.
Yes.
The bottom line is, as the saying goes, where there are no men, be a man. We all are called. That's why everyone listening to this broadcast, everyone has been called.
Yeah.
Now, maybe they're trying to find a way to put their phone on hold, but they've been called. There's, I'll give you one little silly example. I was telling someone, because they say, I want to support Israel, but I don't have money. So, of course, sarcasm, hey, I've honed that to an art form.
It comes easy, yes.
So I said, it must really, really be awful that you can't afford to buy anything from Starbucks. Oh no, I go to Starbucks, and then they kind of like, oh, well. I said, and I'll give you something even easier. I said, you ever get anything on Amazon? Oh, I order from Amazon all the time. I've got Amazon Prime. I said, okay. Do you know if you go to Smile Amazon, you can pick a charity in Israel that you can, they take like pennies of the money that you spend. It's like, and I said, you don't have to, when Mike comes back to Israel and he's going to put out a call, I know he will, of I'm going to Israel. If you want me to bring money there, y'all let me know. And what'll be great is if you have to have a couple of, financial mules, because you yourself can't carry all that cash.
That would be great.
I've got high hopes. Yeah. Okay. I mean, really, no one is saying if you don't have $100, you can't contribute to Israel. Send 5, send 10. I mean, really, we can all do something.
Yeah,
we can all do something.
Yeah, this is a matter of, and this is not just in giving to Israel. This is the whole package, Hanok.
Absolutely.
If everybody does what they're supposed to do, then maybe that's, maybe that's the next time the neighbor says something about, about the world news, you try to push the subject around to Israel and just, open a conversation. That doesn't cost anything. Maybe it's hurting your throat while learning the Hebrew letters. Way to go, Judd. Going to be my Hebrew teacher. Okay. It just, whatever you're supposed to do, we need to do. I just posted, probably haven't seen it yet, because I just posted this on Facebook right as we were going on. One should not blame others for what they refuse to accomplish.
Boom. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Stop pointing fingers. I have a series of very dynamic presentations that I'll be bringing to America in January. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge to people out there. But one of the questions I'm going to be asking them is, and this is very different. Tell me, and it's better if I do this in a one-to-one with people face-to-face. Tell me what you've done to help your local congregation.
Yeah.
Because the global kind of, or national return and restoration isn't happening the way that we had all hoped. I mean, it will, the divine part, the part that we're supposed to do, people have failed miserably. But what we have is the chance to build communities, communities that can support each other. But
it comes down to some easy things, Hanoka. It's like, if you want to work at strengthen families, strengthen yours. If you want to, the whole thing of restoration is only as strong as the local congregations, only as strong as the local synagogues. So strengthen what you have. Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes it's just too simple to that so many people miss it. Well, all right. Hey, man, I tell you what, that we've covered a lot of things. So go back and learn some more from the Coptics, and we'll see where it goes next week, right?
Praise the Lord.
All right. Talk to you next week, man.
Take care, Mike. Regards. Shalom.